The next submission is an oral presentation from Ms. Tilman and Monsieur Bourgeois, as outlined in CMD 15H 2.110 and 2.110A. I guess, Ms. Tilman, you're going to start, or Mr. Bourgeois?
I will.
You decide who goes first.
Okay. Thank you. And thank you for hearing us. On March 31st of 2015, James Cognac of Bruce Power said, "Our region has a 50-year history of safe nuclear operations, and the distribution of potassium iodide tablets have been part of our ongoing emergency preparedness activities for years." This comforting thought belies the way Bruce Power fails to consider, and perhaps even eschews, scientifically valid methods on which to base its assertions, preferring instead those that require nothing more than blind faith. It fails to turn to a body of evidence of proof of its alleged safe operations, or to conduct the studies necessary that would allow this statement to be scientifically quantified. As commissioners overseeing the CNSC, I wonder what authority you turn to that allows Bruce Power to continue its operations as it has in the absence of any scientific support. Our submission to these hearings describe in detail just one of many significant failings, the failure to assemble baseline data that would make its statements about the health of our community scientific rather than simply faith-based statements. Our proposal for a community health survey, followed by a more detailed study, would establish this baseline data. Both residents and visitors to the region have been and continue to be harmed by Bruce Power's and BNPD's licensed activities. We have detailed a few, but by no means all such examples of community harm. Mary Mackenzie's well water was poisoned by radioactive intrusions into the groundwater that also resulted in contamination of the Inver-Huron Park wetlands. CNSC staff asserts, but offers no verifiable data, that removing RWOS1 to RWOS2 resolved this concern, and that these radioactive wastes now empty into Holmes Bay instead of her well water. Despite its statements, Ms. Mackenzie's well water continues to show anomalous radioactivity, something Bruce Power's annual environmental monitoring report has recorded each year. However, CNSC staff is unconcerned about this situation and dismisses it summarily. There is the issue of fasciated dandelions that occurred on our property in the spring of 2008. These dandelions extended in the line right down to the lake. Mark LeBlanc of CNSC informed me that these are a natural occurrence in the world and relied on a plant biologist from McGill to confirm this statement. While a natural occurrence, scientists worldwide continue to seek out such fasciations in the wake of nuclear disasters. Those studying the impacts of Chernobyl relied on the presence of such dandelions as indicators of the best places to begin their research of the nuclear disaster. Mark LeBlanc failed to take this international research into account, but is confident that the large number of these dandelions on our property adjacent to the Bruce facility had nothing whatsoever to do with the restart of one of the Bruce units. In 2009, as set out in our submissions, our leafy vegetables contained more than 50 times the radioactivity of even the nearest neighbor in Bay du Door, where Bruce A is situated. Nonetheless, CNSC staff and nuclear staff are content to rely on air models that do not predict such occurrences. CNSC continues to assert that these air models are correct, that these spikes in radioactive concentrations are safe, and that Bruce's operations have caused no harmful effects. Neither Bruce Power nor CNSC will test the models being relied upon to determine why they failed to predict accurately the radiological chemicals that befall us or identify the scientific basis of their claim. During the 2008 Bruce Power new build environmental assessment, It claimed to recognize the importance of wild mushrooms as an accumulator and absorber of radioactivity from both air and groundwater. There is an extensive body of scientific literature that supports this perspective. However, it said it would not at this time conduct field studies because it could rely on earlier ones with Boletus edulis as the sample species. According to Bruce Power, this is a very common mushroom species in this target area. Such data would be very useful to us as residents here to determine the nature of its radiological footprint. We have requested the data on numerous occasions, and this would give us confidence in its statements. We could identify and determine that its footprint is quantifiable and has been quantified. Two elements necessary before scientifically valid statements about the safety of operations can be made. Sadly, this data has not been forthcoming. During fire training activities in 2008, our store and home property was fumigated twice, in May and June. One of our staff has described the experience as like gulping down diesel. It made both me and my farm hand ill enough that we had to stop baling hay, something a farmer hates to do when conditions are ideal. And of course, I cannot describe how this incident appears to have affected my wife and, most of all, giving her ovarian cancer an opportunity to grow while we dealt with the problems of chronic fatigue symptoms that returned with these incidents. I, in turn, have problems with concentration and respiratory ailments since that time. We spoke to Bruce Power staff about these incidents, and they confirmed a willingness to study the problem. Unfortunately, it failed to include our concern in the study and set out to collect air samples in a manner that would fail us and support its predetermined conclusions. It has failed to this date to acknowledge that it is not the generalized air samples that cause community impacts, but instead the high concentration episodic events that result in devastating impacts to the community. Bruce Power has presented no plans to sample these high concentration episodic events. Instead, it has threatened me with an injunctions lawsuit if I speak about this matter publicly. That is an unscientific attitude. Our community, most of all, wants these operations to be safe. It is our lives that are on the line, our health. The impacts of its operations matters more to us than it matters to any of you. We are here every day. We eat, drink the water. We eat the crops grown here, and we breathe the air. We appear to be in a fallout zone in Huron. There are many things Bruce Power could do to enhance and make its operations safe. But to be able to do this, it first requires baseline data to understand the impacts of its operation, and this is simply unavailable. It is by no means a complicated undertaking. It just takes time and care to create a good sampling of the very baseline data that is necessary to make sound operational decisions about the potential impacts on the community, our health, and the natural environment. We have demonstrated a degraded safety culture prevalent at both Bruce Power and CNSC in our report. The alpha incidents during which as many as 557 contract workers were unnecessarily exposed to alpha particles for more than a month, as well as Bruce Power's self-serving assessment exonerating itself, confirms this. Bruce Power and CNSC staff immediately come to the conclusions that operations are safe. Facts be damned. It is time that the existing culture change and develop into one that promotes safe operations as its primary goal. And we have identified a very simple first step, the establishment of baseline data. As commissioners, you rely on administrative values of radioactivity as if these denote safety. CNSC staff rejects out of hand any studies that suggest radioactivity may not be safe at these concentrations. Over the years that Bruce Power and the BNPD have been our neighbor, we have highlighted a wide variety of its safety failures, many of which have caused us direct harm. Surprisingly, not one of our concerns has ever been considered valid by CNSC staff, Bruce Power, or Ontario Hydro, despite evidence to the contrary. As commissioners, you must be able to see this in and of itself as proof of a degraded safety culture. A concerned CNSC staff would investigate our concerns, share data, and develop the necessary baseline data instead of simply dismissing community concerns at every turn. If Bruce Power were able to dismiss the concerns raised by the community in a scientific way, it would be in a position to provide scientific evidence to substantiate our view that their experiences are always, or our experiences are always wrong, and their analysis is always right. I have two more paragraphs, if I may. Clearly, we are worlds apart from Bruce Power and the CNSC when it comes to the meaning of safety culture. For the community, a strong safety culture would leave no stone unturned to ensure that operations are sound, that equipment is in top order, that oversight is a priority, that inspections are regular and thorough, that protection of workers and the public are always considered a priority, and that each is truly concerned about the releases of hazardous substance resulting from the operations of its facilities. If Bruce Power's application for a 5-year renewal of a single operating license for Bruce A and B is granted by the CNSC, these nuclear facilities will continue operating in their present state until 2020, long after their predicted lifespan. Radionuclides and other hazardous substances will continue to be released to water, air, and soil as additional waste to our environment. Therefore, we recommend that Bruce Power not be granted a single operating license for both Bruce A and B. Bruce Power be directed to develop plans to shut down and decommission Units 3 and Units 4 of Bruce A. Finally, we recommend that Bruce Power's license to operate these reactors be withdrawn entirely and not renewed until such time as it demonstrates conclusively that it is concerned about the impacts on public health from its operations and is prepared to take whatever steps are necessary to prevent any and all possible harm to human health and the environment. Thank you.
Thank you.